Alright, looks like it's recording. Part 2 of the sighting in of the crossbow, the sighting in of Bunjie with a new scope. That is part 2 of this video series to wrap up Crossbow Appreciation Month. We're getting real close to the end here. Like I said in the other video, there are 2 projects I want to accomplish during Crossbow Appreciation Month. The first was putting a new scope on. Well, there were 3 really, when you think about it. The first was the quieting of the crossbow. I wanted to install all that new gear, and I've done that, and I've done a video on it. I've done several videos on it, so go check those out if you haven't seen them already. In addition to that, though, I want to get a new scope on here, and I want to talk about that scope here. The scope that we have installed here is the Twilight DLX from Excalibur. Now, it's got a little green circle here, it's got a little red circle here, and the reason it's got those circles on there is because it is an illuminated scope. It says it's for crossbow shooting 275 to 410 feet per second. So this scope, if I like it, should work on Bunjie. Should also work on future crossbows if I upgrade to a faster crossbow. So if I really like this scope, it was a $300 investment, so this is nothing to sneeze at here. The entire Bunjie setup, the Axiom SMF package that I bought in 2010, cost me $589 from Bass Pro Shops. So this is a big investment when you're spending $300, basically half the price of the crossbow on a new scope. That's a pretty big deal. So I don't take it lightly, but I did a lot of research and I talked to the company a little bit too to make sure that it was going to work on this crossbow. They swear it is. Originally I thought it wasn't because the speed ring only goes from 300 to 400 or something like that. Problem for me is this crossbow, when I installed that quieting gear, I did another video about that, dropped the speed down to around 280. So I'm in the 280s or so, or low 280s for speed. But they have insisted to me that by turning the speed ring beyond the 300, keep turning that speed ring past the 300, I get down to 280. I should be able to zoom this in, sight it in, zero it in at 30, 40, 50 yards, whatever. As long as I'm good out to 30, 35, 40, maybe I'm happy. I'm a happy camper. So, but this really is a beautiful scope. I've looked through it, and it has a few advantages over prior scopes. I wanted to talk to you about scopes a little bit, and we'll do that right now in this little video. Get my stuff out of the way here. You'll have to excuse me, keep turning behind me. I'm going to bring all this gear right up front where I can get to it. I got boxes and piles of crap all over the place here. I got my clipboard, and I got all my broadheads in a separate little fishing container there. Got broadheads and field points in there. We'll get the clipboard out of the way. I've got 2 see-through totes full of gear. I got broadheads that we're going to be looking at here and all this other good stuff. But this is the scope that I just bought, the Twilight DLX. The previous scopes, the one I took off of there, was the Excalibur vari-zone scope. Now, this package originally came with this scope. This is the original crossbow scope that came off of Bunjie. This scope. I'm about to show you an artifact. This is an artifact, right? This is something that someday will be in the Crossbow Museum Hall of Fame. Right? I don't know. Kind of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has all those classy guitars from days gone by. It's kind of beat up. It's got some scratches on it. I don't remember abusing it like this, but whatever. This is just a basic crossbow scope that originally came on Bunjie. It has no speed ring. So it's basically designed for a crossbow that shoots around 300 feet per second. It's not designed for a crossbow that shoots 350 at all. Could you make it work? I don't know, but why would you try? I don't know. But it doesn't have a speed ring. When you turn that ring that's on here, all it does is zoom in and zoom out. It doesn't change. It just clears up your magnification. It clears up the focus. Let's put it that way. It doesn't zoom in, doesn't zoom out. Clears up focus. That's all it does. The piece of tape that fell on the lens. Boy, this thing is just bad. But I killed a lot of deer with this. I really enjoyed this scope. I didn't have any problem with it. No real complaints. The problem with this scope was it has 2 turrets, of course, one for elevation, one for windage. And the problem with this scope is that when you take off the turret cap, maybe I can show you here, but when you take off the turret cap, I don't remember if it was the windage or the elevation. I don't remember which one. But when you take off the turret cap, one of them didn't click. Like when you turned it, you get a little screwdriver here. I can reach that. One of them, and it was, nope, that one clicked. Okay, so the windage clicked. But one of them ceased to click, and by not clicking, that is a problem, because now you can't tell for sure that you're actually making a difference. And I wasn't like, oh yeah, it's that one. That one's not clicking. It doesn't really click. So by not clicking, you can't be confident that it's going to stay once you clicked it and you're affecting your elevation, or in that case, your elevation. I couldn't be convinced and satisfied 100% that it was going to remain in that spot. This is what's known as a multiplex scope. I think all that means is it has multiple reticles. It had multiple aiming points, you know, so you can aim out to 30, 50 yards, I think it was. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. That scope was awesome. No problems with it, no complaints whatsoever. But time to upgrade when that stopped happening. Plus, I didn't have the vari-zone type ring. The speed ring is what Excalibur calls it. Different manufacturers call them different things. I'm drinking Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee. Not sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, just like the product. That's all it is. And you can tell that it's probably affected my rate of speech because I got a turbo shot of espresso put in this thing. And the only problem I have with that is that it's almost gone. That's the only problem I have with that. So I'm going to talk 100 miles an hour through all of these videos. I hope you're enjoying them. But that scope served me well, had no problems. Now that scope is in the vari-zone package because it didn't come with its own package. So it's in the vari-zone package because I took the vari-zone out of there and put it on the CROSSBOW. Now I've taken the vari-zone off, put it in the Twilight DLX package, and the Twilight DLX scope is on the CROSSBOW. So everybody's happy. This is another artifact, but boy, this is a nice scope. I always like this scope, the vari-zone. This one, not a bad scope, okay? And you can see the difference. Look at the difference between these two scopes. I mean, not only the length is different, but the size of the objective lens. Look how big around that is. That's 44 millimeters. This one is a mere 32 millimeters or something like that. Much smaller objective lens. And for that reason, this one will gather more light, allow more light to enter the scope. It's also got a 30 millimeter tube instead of a 1-inch tube, so it's going to allow a lot more light to come down that tube into my eyepiece down here, and I will be able to dial that in and be able to see things in low light. Now this scope this one has a speed ring on it. That was the improvement over that multiplex scope that came on Bunjie. That's the improvement. This one goes from 250 up to 350, the speed ring does, and it also does have a focus ring to make sure that it's in focus. It has adjustments for windage. Wait, this thing's backwards here. What's going on? Like this. Okay. I just threw it back together so I didn't lose the screws. It's got an adjustment for windage, adjustment for elevation on the turrets there. That's what those are called, turrets. The objective diameter on this thing is nowhere near. Look at the difference in the distance around them. You can see here that this one is much smaller. This is like maybe 35 millimeters or something like that. I'll put it on the screen. Much smaller objective diameter of the lens. This one is 44. Huge difference in light, low light performance. But they both have speed rings, okay? And they both have adjustments for focus to clear up your sight. But this one has no illumination on this. Reticles from 10 to 50. Very good scope for crossbow hunters. If you're into crossbow hunting, the vari-zone scope can't go wrong with it. Some guys were talking to me here recently about the tact zone style scope from, and actually a lot of folks have, there's two things I was going to say about that, I guess. The first one, a lot of guys have talked to me about the tact zone scope too. I skipped over that to go to this because I was going to spend more money on a scope. I might as well get the one that has the low light performance. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but that was the reason I went with this one, because this is the king of low light as far as crossbow scopes are concerned. But I know there are other manufacturers that make great crossbow scopes. Zeiss makes fantastic crossbow scopes. Zeiss makes the best glass on the planet. And if you can get any camera with a Zeiss lens, if you look at Sony's, I had an old video camera with a Zeiss lens. It was the premier lens of video cameras in its day. Like, you just couldn't get better glass for a lens. And Zeiss still makes high-end glass for DSLRs, for example. I don't own any of it because I can't afford that kind of stuff. But you know, I know that there are other scopes that are awesome. And a couple of folks had suggested I look at like Hawk scopes. A couple of folks had suggested that I look at these other manufacturers. I'm sure they're great scopes. There's just tons of great equipment out there in this day and age. I do not use that stuff. I stick with what the manufacturer recommends, only because I'm reasonably confident that Excalibur has repeatedly shot this scope on this crossbow or one similar to it. Back in the other day, I was looking at the Excalibur website. They claimed that and it says on there that the Axiom, this package that I have, was available from 2011 to 2016. Excalibur, you got to check your documentation. I bought one of these in 2010 and I still have the receipt for it. So I bought it from Bass Pro Shops in 2010. And basically the first full year that you could hunt with a crossbow in Pennsylvania. But when they finally got all this stuff sorted out. I missed the very first season of crossbow hunting in Pennsylvania, but only that season. I did not miss any subsequent seasons. And hopefully I won't miss any in the future for a long, long time. But, so Excalibur's got to update its website. But other than that, it's no matter. This scope, I'm pretty confident that Excalibur believes that this scope will work with their crossbow. Other manufacturers make great products. I don't quarrel with their products. It's just that I want to, the best guarantee that you have of success is sticking with what your manufacturer recommends. And that goes for broadheads typically, goes for strings, it goes for all this. I don't go changing stuff. Put the scope in place, put all the rings on, rings in place. You got the base of those rings right here. There are screws on this side where it attaches to the Picatinny rail. Those are now in place. Hopefully they're in the right place. I'm just going to make sure that they are tight. And I've got a big fat screwdriver here for a big fat left hand, and I'm just going to tighten that up and put it in place. And ta-da, it's in place. Everybody's happy with that. Make sure you have a good screwdriver too. Just like those Allen wrenches can round out the hole on that, the wrong screwdriver can really do damage to stuff like this. These things, they make them out of kind of soft metal, and they just don't, they're not meant for everyday use. They're meant for single use, putting them in place. Sometimes they just don't last, you know, it's pretty bad. First step on putting the scope on, new scope on, make sure it's a little loose in there. Make sure everybody's happy, right? A little bit loose, I can turn it, no problem. I've got the illumination dial on this side. Got the windage over here, got my turret up there for my elevation. And the first thing we're gonna do, we're just gonna put through, now I'm not sighting this in, I'm not looking at anything. I'm simply setting it up as though I'm gonna take a shot, and I'm looking for black over, it's all black on one side, it's black on the other side, whatever else. We want it to be nice and clear, open, everything else. And when I put it right there, it's actually just about right. I'm a big guy, got long arms, and this crossbow, I had to put an extension on it from Excalibur to add an inch and a half to the butt here, to the butt of the stock. And I've got lots of room here, but you line up on that thing, and when I look through that right there, I'm happy with that right there. What you would do is push it all the way forward, put it down, or basically you want it about 3 inches from your eye, okay? So I'm looking through it, and I can tell you right now, 3 inches from my eye, that right there is about right, and I think it's about 3 inches. But you just want to put it on here so it's loose so you can slide it. Get it on there where you're looking through it to where it's comfortable shooting. Comfort's number one on this, okay? Put it where you're going to be when you're shooting. You don't want to adjust your shooting style and hold the crossbow differently in order to accommodate the scope. We want the scope to be in place to accommodate us. That's the key. Look at it from that perspective, and you can't go wrong. So what I do, got it on there, and I think that's just about right. I'm going to leave it right there. But you would slide it forward and back, and I figured I'd have to slide it all the way forward. That sounded about right because that's typically what I end up doing. Plenty of room here for me to put a GoPro mount on carefully. Later on down the road, I will probably do that, but I did not have. The GoPro mount takes a different Allen wrench from the set of scope wrenches that I have. So I do have to actually go get that kit of Allen wrenches. I've been speaking about that here, did a video about Allen wrenches. I actually do have to go get one of my kits of Allen wrenches to get the GoPro mount off of the old, I'll show you right here. This is what the GoPro mount, and I did GoPro mounting videos in the past. This GoPro mount right here takes different Allen wrenches, so I'll have to get those, a different set of Allen wrench keys to get that out of there. Not a big deal. And I might be switching over to a Tacticam this year. I've been looking at those, so we'll see. No guarantees. That's still up in the air. I got a little bit of time to decide. I'm probably doing Maryland with GoPros, switch to the Tacticam for the Pennsylvania crossbow season, the 37 days of awesome. Probably use the Tacticam for that if I go that route. So I haven't decided 100%, but got to fix, you know, I got to get the scope on first, decide what scope I'm going to use. This may not work. I got to figure that out, and I got to figure out the broadheads situation first, right? One step at a time. So Crossbow Appreciation Month, one way or another. The weather this morning, I'm top of the world right now. we've had nothing but rain, terrible, disastrous rain and flooding for the last 2 weeks. We've received, in August alone, well over 20 inches of rain here in northeastern Pennsylvania, 4 or 5 inches in one day. We got 3 inches overnight one night, 2 days after the first time, and we just had flood after flood after flood, and we've had 100-year floods, 3 of them in a week, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just been awful. So that's been tough. And this morning it's overcast, but I'll take it, man. I'm sitting out here. It's not even all that muggy yet, but it's give it time. But like, I'd be pouring with sweat some days here, so this will work. Make the best of the weather. That's what I say. But we've got the scope where we want it. I want to make sure that I can move that. We got the scope where we want it. Now the next step is to turn it so that it is level. We want to make sure that that scope is perfectly level. The 20-yard line is what we are looking at to make sure that it's level. When I say the 20-yard line, in a typical crossbow scope, the entire middle is one line, right? That's your 20-yard line. That's your baseline for sighting it in. It's your baseline for the scope. That needs to be 100% level with the limbs. You want it exactly the same as the limbs. The reason for that is it's a phenomenon called canting. We want to avoid canting of your crossbow. If you fire the crossbow and you've got it tilted a little bit, or you fire the crossbow and you got it tilted the other way a little bit, you aren't going to be accurate. All of a sudden, you're thinking the arrow's going this way. It's going to go in that direction, but the arc is going to drop over there instead of over here. It does affect your arc, and that's the #1 reason for inaccuracy. So canting is #1. Like, I've read that somewhere, and I can see that being a problem. I've never had an issue with it, I don't believe, but it certainly can be a problem. So to avoid that, what we do is we make sure the scope is hooked up, right? We want to eliminate as many possibles for error, as much room for error as possible, so we are left with properly functioning equipment. And then the only problem that can arise when we head out into the field is human error. And as long as we've accounted for all the mechanical error and gotten that out of the way, we can control the human error when we get out in the field. We can control that, right? We can pause before we take that shot. We can take good shots. We can make sure we're not canting. Think about it before we pull the trigger. All that good stuff, we can control all of those things. So there it is. So I think I've got it where I want it, actually. It looks pretty level, and I'm going to look at it here, and then I'm sort of looking through the eyepiece, and then I'm thinking about my limbs, and I can see that, yeah, let's turn it just a little bit that way so that it's nice and level. Back just here, just a smidgen, and it looks like that 20-yard line is in fact lined up with those limbs. I'm looking, and I feel good about that. So now we'll ratchet right down tight as we can go. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to tighten them up a little bit. And the way these are, you have to be very careful with this. If you tighten your scope down too much, you can crimp that tube, and you don't want that to happen. You want even pressure on each side, and we're not going to tighten one down and then tighten the other one. We're going to tighten one a little bit, and then we're going to go to the other side. And we're going to keep the two sides even. We're going to keep them the same distance apart. There will be, when I am done, according to the instructions, a little bit of gap on each side of the scope. Just a little gap. And so we're just going to keep an eye on it and do that. Now, some guys put Loctite on there. I don't do that, but it's not a bad idea. I can see where that would be a valuable thing. A little bit of blue Loctite. I am of the opinion, though, that before I go afield, I just periodically test all of my Allen wrenches, all my little screws and stuff to make sure they're tight. That is what I do. So far, I think that's pretty good. All right. A little bit of a gap. There should be, I think it was like a 1 millimeter gap. I should read that. Let me grab those instructions real quick. Just make sure we're good. You can't go wrong with sticking with what the manufacturer's telling you about this stuff, people. I'm telling you, like, just read their, then it's not a lot of information. It's just a sheet of paper. But make sure when you're mounting the scope that the crossbow is not cocked. Okay, thanks for that. I made that joke before, I just think that's funny. Excalibur puts that in all their stuff. You can bet there's a reason for it, but it seems like that would be common sense. I think when they were talking about the the rings. Oh, actually, it wasn't in the scope documentation. It was in the rings documentation. I don't know where the rings documentation is. That's laying on the ground here somewhere. I don't think I'm going to go digging for it. I think I'm going to instead... Man, I got more crap here than you can shake a stick at. Oh, that's my decibel meter instructions and kit. We're good. I think you just want it to a point where it's not going to move anymore, but you want to make sure that you've got it onto it nice and tight, but you don't want to crimp that scope. So make sure you're leaving a gap there. I don't have anything to measure 1 millimeter, but that's starting to look like 1 millimeter to me. So you just don't, if you get to the point where those things look like they're getting ready to touch, then you have gone too far, my friend, with that. So again, you want to go one side then the other. You don't ratchet down one side and then ratchet down the other side. That's not a good way to do it. I can't really see this guy. What do we got there? Oh, he's got lots of gap. Let's open this one back up. So, hope you're enjoying these videos, this Crossbow Appreciation Month stuff. I sure enjoy doing this stuff, and it's been, I had such great hopes. You always want to do more videos than you can, or at least that's my way I've been doing this stuff. I've always been like, oh, I want to do the video on this and a video on that. And I've tried to take a lot of the suggestions that were given to me on the Facebook page. I've tried to make videos about a lot of those topics, or at least address casually some of those topics, at least touch on them, so that people could get a good mix during this crossbow month. If you're new to crossbows, it's pretty simple. Like, I don't know how people get good at compound bow hunting, because getting into that is such a challenge. With crossbows, a little bit different, you know. With crossbows, it's easier, but it still can get, I think the entry to crossbows, getting in there and doing this stuff, oh, I'm tightening the one I already did. I think getting into crossbows is a lot easier than getting into many of the other forms of hunting, especially compound bow hunting. But I think that looks like it's as good as far as it wants to go. I don't like tightening that one down. What am I looking at there? Okay, that's about the same. Yep, they're the same. I think we're good. It doesn't move one bit, so that is as tight as it's going to go. And again, I will tighten them a little bit as I'm hunting. But I think getting into crossbow hunting, it's accessible, right? You can get into this, you can have a good time with it. The difference between crossbow hunting and compound bow hunting, though, that's a lot harder to get into compound bow hunting. I don't have any problem with people who hunt with a compound bow. I am totally impressed by that, and I think it's awesome. I just don't have that kind of time to invest in that, because if I did, I wouldn't make any videos about it, that's for sure. And I wouldn't spend any time with my family, that's for sure, because you got to spend a lot of time shooting. This, I'm just taking a leisurely Sunday morning, sit out here for a couple of hours, get this stuff done, and we'll be in good shape. It should work, right? But you still have to understand a number of important concepts when you crossbow hunt. And I think it's important that we have some kind of information out there. Hopefully people who are new to crossbow hunting can watch some of my videos and get something out of them and feel good about it. Now I'm looking through here, and this is what you'd be doing here if you were doing this. Make sure that there's no canting. There is not. It's nice and level. And make sure that the limbs line up with that 20-yard line. They appear to do so. They line up with the barn too. That's kind of nice. Pretty cool. So this looks good. I think we're good to go. Now the next step is going to be to shoot this bad boy and try and sight it in. The speed ring, I'm going to adjust that down. It goes 300, 310, 20, 30. So I want to go about 2 clicks under 300. There is no 250 or anything like that on here. And that's pretty typical. Anymore, crossbows have gotten so much faster. When this came out, when I bought this crossbow in 2010, there were no crossbows that shot 375 feet per second, I don't believe. Certainly none that were shooting 400. They were reaching 350. There was a lot of discussion about the ones that could shoot 350, and even the Excalibur ones, the recurve ones with the big durable limbs, they're cracking their limbs at 350. Same thing for all the compound ones. Every manufacturer was releasing a 350, it seemed like, for this one season, and every one of them was having cracked limbs and problems with them, it seemed like. You're reading about it all the time. Now, you don't read about cracked limbs like that. There's the occasional problem, especially if it was dry fired, stuff like that, because there's so much tension on these poor things. But for the most part, we don't have that anymore, right? This isn't the, now 350 is easily attainable. There's lots of 350 feet per second crossbows and lots of 400s, in fact. And we don't have the problem with that. But this scope is really built for the future. The 300 goes up to 410, I see, 410 feet per second. And it says on the case, of course, like I said, it goes from 275 to 410. So there's a big stretch of big range for these crossbows. This crossbow will go on, this scope will go on future crossbows as well. So it's not a problem. Pretty cool though, what a difference. The other one was meant for a 300 feet per second crossbow, and that's all it was meant for. So I've really come a long way in scopes, even though I haven't updated the underlying crossbow. So we'll see how this is going to go. That's the end of this video. We've got the scope on there. I hope that gives you some tips on how to line up the scope, get it on there, and have a good time with that and all that good stuff. I'm anxious to start shooting this. I'm going to do that in a couple of minutes, but you are going to have to wait until tomorrow for that video. I hope that you will stick around. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll not only subscribe and watch the rest of the Crossbow Appreciation Month videos here. I'm doing a video a day in August about crossbows and crossbow hunting and other similar topics. Isn't that awesome? I hope you're enjoying it. And I hope you'll stick around and check out some of my old videos. See some of the previous crossbow related videos I've released. Some of the hunts that I've been on with Bunjie here and some of the fun we've had. And until next time, all hail Bunjie!